Okay, in this video, we're going to install Git. And Git is what we use for version control as coders. It's not Ruby on Rails specific, but you'll use it on Rails, you'll use it for Python, you'll use it for just about everything you do. It allows you to save your code, and especially if more than one person is working on it, it saves who worked on what and when and kind of merges everything together. It's just super important. Not only that, but Rails requires a terminal, right? A command prompt, like an old DOS prompt. On Mac or Linux, it's the Mac or Linux terminal. On Windows, there really isn't one. We have a PowerShell that kind of works. We have a command prompt, which is sort of like the old DOS prompt. It sort of works, but those things don't work well with Git. And we need to run Git in our terminal to save our code. So luckily, there's a version of Git for Windows that has a version of Bash that works on Windows, which is fantastic. It's just like having a Mac or a Linux terminal on a Windows computer. Allows you to use Git and all the cool things. So that's what we're going to use for both Git and just our terminal stuff in Rails. And so that's what we're going to look at in this video. So go to git-scm.com. And this is the website here. And just come down here and download the latest version. Right now it's 2.18.0. If it's a different version by the time you watch this video, no big deal. Just download the latest version. And I'm going to save it to my desktop, like with Node. Save it anywhere you want, doesn't really matter. 39 megabytes, shouldn't take too long to download. Actually, it should just take moments on my internet connection, but for some reason it's going very slow. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video while this downloads, and we'll start up as soon as it finishes. Okay, so it finished downloading, and we can go ahead and just click it and run it. Pull this over and go ahead and click next and next. Now we want to make sure this Git Bash thing has been checked because we're definitely going to use that. If you want to add a desktop icon, you can go ahead and do that. It's going to save it here on the start menu. That's fine. Click next. Now here's a weird thing. It asks to select your default text editor, and it's saying Vim. I've never used Vim, but you don't use any text editor with Git, so I'm not sure what this is all about. If you have Notepad++ on your computer, change it to that. Otherwise, just ignore this. We're never going to use it in a text editor, so I'm not really sure what that's all about. So click next. Now here's the important screen. We have three options. We want to change it to use Git and the optional Unix tools from the Windows command prompt, because this is going to add it to our path. And if you know what the path is, the Windows path allows us to run essentially Git from anywhere on our computer. It's added to the path. So that's important. Make sure that's clicked. Next. The rest of these, we can go with the defaults. OpenSSH, we actually do need that. OpenSSL library, we need that. We'll see in a minute. We can keep that as the default. Well, these can be the default, and we're pretty much done. So now it's just going through and doing its thing and installing. So I'm pretty fast. I don't think I need to pause the video. We can just chat for a second until it finishes. So once this is installed, we need to do a few more things before we can use version control on, for instance, GitHub. We need to create an SSH key and do all kinds of cool stuff like that. So we'll look at that in a minute. But you can see it's moving right along. Okay, and we're done. So we don't really need to look at the release notes, but let's go ahead and launch this sucker. So launch Git Bash, click finish. Pull this over, and here we go. So we can resize this any size we want. It could go to the full screen, which is nice. And very cool. So we could see, we could type in, these are going to be Unix or Linux, I guess, command prompt terminal commands, right? So if you've ever used a terminal on a Linux or a Mac, these are the commands we're going to use. pwd shows us what directory we're in. And this is just my computer's default directory. My computer is called Flat Planet because I think it's hilarious that people still think the world is flat. Stay in this directory for now because we're going to need to do something in the next video. But yeah, very cool. So this is the Git Bash. This is what we're going to be using from now on with Ruby on Rails and also with our version control. And we'll go ahead and set up our version control stuff in a couple of videos from now. But in the next video, really quickly, we'll look at creating an SSH key that we're going to need for a couple of different reasons, and we'll look at that in the next video.